Ambassador Dr. Jamil Khan into the discussion also. Dr. Khan, every now and then whenever we have the discussion regarding as to the situation that is unfolding in Gaza, about the resolutions at both of the most important organs of the United Nations, the United Nations General Assembly as well as the United Nations Security Council, every time we get to know and we know for a fact that the resolutions which are passed by the United Nations Security Council have the binding effect and they need to be implemented as they've been passed. But as far as the resolutions of the United Nations General Assembly are concerned, they don't have that binding force. So if they don't have that binding force, naturally shouldn't we be questioning as to why such type of resolutions are being passed back and forth at the United Nations General Assembly when they don't have that legal force of implementation?
Well, that is enshrined in the United Nations Charter, Chapter 4. And in the United Nations Charter, Chapter 4, it describes all the functions of the General Assembly. So, in its function, once it passed the resolution, it would be non-binding. That was decided at the time once the United Nations was formulated. And at that time, all the 5 members, those who had the veto power, they had decided that if it is vetoed, then obviously it cannot be implemented. So 2 things here. This resolution of 12667, which was passed yesterday, it was in an emergency meeting of the General Assembly. An emergency meeting can be called by any member state, and then if it's one-fourth of the total members, if they assent with it, then the emergency meeting is called. So in this emergency meeting, they decided, as you were describing, urgent cessation of the hostility, and then Gaza, and they emphasized that the compliance with the international humanitarian law and the protection of the civilians. So all these things are enshrined in that, and there are so many other ingredients. But it's not for the first time that the General Assembly has passed this resolution. It's not the first time that 2 weeks ago, United Nations Security Council, once the resolution was being passed, it was vetoed by United States, and that was also to bring cessation or ceasefire in Gaza. So, and then there were more than 3, 2426 United Nations resolution, in which there was only the resolution was drafted to give a pass for the humanitarian relief, but even that was not implemented by Israel. So there are 2 parts of it. One, that the resolutions are vetoed, and 2, that even if it's passed under Chapter 6 of the United Nations or Chapter 5 of the United Nations Charter, Israel doesn't really care about it and they don't implement it. What to talk of that? The mandatory provision, which is enshrined in Chapter number 7 of the United Nations Charter, ICC. All the functions of the ICC is given in that. And you have already described about the warrant of the ICC, and this warrant was issued after all what we are discussing here: the casualties, the humanitarian, the starvation of the people as a weapon of war, and the ethnic cleansing, the genocide, you name anything which forms the war crime, and that is already there in the evidence before issuing the warrant. So what does it imply? It implies one thing, that Israel, so long as it has the backing of the most powerful country of the world, then they would keep doing it. See what has happened in Israel, what Israel has done. Last about 48 hours, more than 40 targets, they have neutralized the Syrian ships, all ammunition depot, which is the asset of the Syrian state. Ammunition depot, the aircraft, the bases, and all strategic locations have been bombed and destroyed. But there has to be some reason for it. Why all these components or all these foreign states, Lebanon and Syria, all their assets, most of their assets are being destroyed. The reason is, and Hamas, you have already discussed, the kind of bombardment, 85 to 90% of the houses have razed to the ground. And the casualties you have already enumerated, 45,000 almost, the difference of 200. And it's going to be 50,000. It's going to be 100,000 if people do not react. If the world only keeps passing resolution in the General Assembly and the world population with a very soft heart and the humane heart, if they keep coming on the roads like a flood of people around, but does it make any difference? Because those countries who are under the influence of Israel and the Israeli lobby, then in that case, probably that influence would keep working on those governments. And once they come to the United Nations, whether Security Council or General Assembly, you will find that there would be an opposition. In General Assembly, of course, you already said that 158 countries, that is a moral victory. But does that moral victory save the life of the people? Does that moral victory save the starvation? Does that moral victory save the people and the kids from the starvation, from the dehydration? Last 60 days, UNRWA chief was my colleague while I was posted in the United Nations, Filippo Lazzarani, such a dedicated person, and what he's saying, it's one shivers around the kind of state of affair in Gaza, but there has to be some reason for it. Kushner says that Gaza is a very good strip, and it could be razed to the ground and could be rebuilt. Mr. Trump, the designated prime minister, it says that Gaza, the Israel should quickly have the victory before peace is brought in Gaza. Now, who would define what means the victory to Netanyahu? Does it mean that no implementation of any Security Council resolution? Does it mean no implementation of any international law? Does it mean no implementation of any humanitarian law? So, if it means that, then perhaps that would be the victory, which is being announced.
Lead us to raise some important questions. Naturally, if that could be the victory as far as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's perspective is concerned, and also that relentless backing on the part of the United States of America is concerned, you already mentioned there is some moral victory. 158 members voting in favor of this particular resolution, asking for immediate, unconditional, and a permanent ceasefire. So, doesn't that naturally lead us to question there should be an international organization or body that is more inclusive and more democratic? I'll come back to you, Dr. Jamil Khan, for your understanding regarding that. Mr. Malik, we really appreciate that. Dr. Jamil Khan, those questions, those very pertinent questions rightfully raised by you already in your take, doesn't that naturally call for the establishment of an organization that is more inclusive, more democratic, when we've got that veto that has been the stumbling block as far as the ceasefire, any chances of a ceasefire in Gaza is concerned? 4 times the United States of America vetoing those resolutions?
Well, in 1948 also, as my brother Abu Bakr was saying, 1948-56 villages and towns were razed to the ground and occupied by Israelis. And then again 1967, the sovereign territory, the territory of Palestine was occupied, as well as the Golan Heights, which was the integral part of the Syria. And even now, last about 72 hours, they have entered into Syria against all international law and occupying Syrian territories on the excuse of having a buffer zone and right of self-defense and so on, and neutralizing the threats. So reverting back to your question, yes, the world, if they don't find any other solution, they're already working on one thing that is known as United for Consensus. There are about 60 countries. They have united together to see and to strive the reconfiguration of the Security Council veto power country. And they want to give some more countries and some more continents the veto power so that there are some balance in it. To what extent do they succeed? Because there are opposing groups within the member countries. They are trying to protect their interests. India on one side, Germany on the other side, Japan on the other side. So some of these competing countries for the veto power, they have a prosperant, the applicant. So they are the ones. But then sooner or later, if the world keeps suffering like this, the one which has happened in Gaza, tomorrow it can happen anywhere in any country. We have already witnessed Iraq, we have already witnessed Libya, we have already witnessed, now we are witnessing Syria. Gaza, we are discussing, and Lebanon ceasefire, you mentioned, but it's just for the name's sake. ceasefire was signed. The agreement was signed, but Israel is relentlessly, they are bombarding wherever they want to in Lebanon. So,
what was the purpose behind this very veto at the United Nations Security Council? To what purposes was it included in this particular mandate of the permanent five?
No, the agenda was to bring a ceasefire there and to release the hostages of the conflicting groups. But that means that the Palestinians would get their prisoners and the Israelis would get their hostages. And then humanitarian aid and the development, or most of the things were already covered in that, but that was vetoed on the ground that it cannot. They have to first release the hostages, and Netanyahu wanted to have a full victory before a ceasefire. So he has announced yesterday perhaps that he's not going to have any ceasefire in Gaza until he declares a complete victory. So therefore, the resolution which is vetoed, it was just to empower Israel, and why Israel is being supported to that level where the warships are already there in the area, covering the front of the Gaza, covering the Red Sea, covering all fronts of the Arab countries. The reason being that the other countries do not come in support of Gaza. There was only one country which was strongly supporting, and that all the line of communication very smartly has been cut off. All the axes of resistance which could pose some difficulty for Israel against its atrocities, that has also been neutralized, and now they have a free hand to do whatever they want and wherever they want to go, because they know that now the horizontal threat is gone. Only vertical threat of Iran still has some value. Vertical threat means the air threat, and that also it appears, if we connect the dots, it appears that sooner than later they are trying to attempt to neutralize that as well. So the veto power in one line, in one sentence, the answer is it is just to let Israel to complete its agenda. And what is its agenda?
Dr. Jamil Khan, is there any mechanism within the United Nations framework that if the committee of the nation has the conscious and understanding about a certain issue, for example, for instance, keeping this Palestinian issue aside for a second, any sort of a issue at the global stage, for which 158 members think that this is exactly what should be passed in the form of a resolution at the major organ, the United Nations General Assembly. But such a resolution is vetoed by one permanent member at the United Nations Security Council. So is there any mechanism to bring in an understanding in the larger interest of the global community to take into consideration that understanding of 158 members and give it more weight as to the understanding of one single permanent member of the UNSC?
So that could be better defined, that what are the implemented clauses of such resolution. We have already discussed that it is a non-implementing, it is just a moral victory, but non-implementing resolution, non-binding resolution. We have already discussed, and I have already given you the authority of Chapter 4 of the Security Council Charter. So that is the international law. We can't help it out. How it can be done, why it is vetoed, we have discussed. But then Chapter 7, unless it is implemented, and that can only be implemented if it is not vetoed in the Security Council resolution. So this catch-22, it appears, would go on so long as Israel would have its full support by not only United States but some more countries. But now, last 2 weeks ago, except for United States, all other countries have supported that resolution. So it appears that United States, so long as it doesn't, what can happen is Chapter 8 of the United Nations Charter. And what is Chapter 8? Chapter 8 gives the some authority to the regional organizations to maintain peace and to resolve the conflicts of the region and the area. So what they could have done, like for example, OIC. OIC has been formed under Chapter 8 of the United Nations Charter, and if they wanted, collectively, they could have decided to impose sanction on Israel. And what kind of a sanction they could have done? They could have asked that we do not allow our airspace to be used to transport the weapons and the ammunition to Israel. We don't allow Israel aircrafts to really fly over our space. We impose the ban on Israeli products, and there could be so many to the extent that they could have said that we are going to go to we are going to have our own security component, and like NATO, there is a clause in the OIC charter, and they could have then decided to really have a peace course of their own. But I think none of these initiatives could be taken, and why it could not be taken, that most of the rulers of these countries, they are not.
Right, these are the options that could have been taken at that particular time. Now, since they haven't been taken, let me bring this particular point regarding as to the inclusivity and the democratization of the UN has seen particular towards Mr. Malik. Doesn't this whole situation call for more inclusivity as far as that very phenomenon of veto is concerned? Also mentioned by Dr. Jamil Khan earlier, there is a group of almost 60 countries which are thinking united for consensus. Dr. Jamil Khan, very quickly, as to what is your understanding regarding this particular statement, another part of it by President-elect Donald Trump, those responsible will be hit harder than anybody has been hit in the long and storied history of the United States of America, goes on to write in the uppercase letters, release the hostages now. What does that mean? Do you expect any shift in policy under him as to that of Biden's administration?
So far as the Middle East is concerned, there is no shift expected in the policy, because as I said, that the Israeli lobby is very strong, and both the candidates have been claiming during their election campaign, and they've been trying to take lead from each other so far as the support of Israel is concerned. So I don't see any shift in the policy. I know why people were not happy with Joe Biden, particularly the Muslim community of Michigan, as it was said, because the Joe Biden time they started, and Joe Biden time there's so many losses, the life of were lost. But then in Joe Biden time, again we have seen during the last term, and we can see what statements are coming forth, and we are not really expecting now that Israel knows that there is no challenge in the region, no challenge to Israel, so they can do whatever they want. So what victory?
Policy under Donald Trump's administration, when he takes power, as far as the situation in Gaza is concerned. Unfortunately, we are short of time, and I'll have to end the show right over here. Dr. Jamil Khan, former ambassador, joining us on Skype. Thank you very much for taking time out for views on News Tonight. Really appreciate that.